takeandtalkpics.com. I'm Rob Kruger, and this is episode 74 with nature and wildlife photographer Lewis Kemper.
Here's Ansel Adams right in this room with all these people, but he made you feel like you were the most important one in that room.
Today's featured guest is Lewis Kemper. Lewis, are you ready to share with Photo World today?
I'm ready.
Awesome. Lewis is a fine art, nature, and wildlife photographer and has been for over 30 years. His travels throughout 47 states from Alaska to Florida are the scenes for his subjects. Lewis is still doing color work with his 4x5 camera as well as digital work, and he is a Canon Explorer of Light. Lewis, welcome to Take and Talk Pics.
Thank you. Actually, I have to make a clarification. I'm now a Canon Explorer of Light Emeritus. I'm not under current contract.
Oh, okay. Yes. All right. Thank you for the correction there. And now you know to go update your website. So, as we all should be doing, right?
Yeah, I'm actually in the process of making a whole new one. I'm pretty sure it's updated on my current website.
Oh, okay,
but
maybe I misread.
If you search me, it finds old things, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I've barely scratched the surface, and you've already made a few adjustments in correcting my words there, but can you share a little bit more about yourself with Photo World?
Oh, let's see. Well, actually, I'm one of the few photographers I know that actually studied photography. I have a degree in fine art photography from the George Washington University in Washington, D.C., but I actually got my start in photography in a class my senior year in high school is what got me interested. So it goes back a long time. And I've always enjoyed nature and wildlife and that kind of thing. So obviously that's the type of photography that I do.
Yeah. Same story, just a few years apart, really. I started with my senior year of high school as well, and I, too, have degrees in photography for studying it specifically in college. So, all right, there's a few of us out there.
All right, yeah, there aren't many.
I'm a huge advocate for schooling. There's just something totally different. You can get the hands-on experience and the deadlines. It really keeps you in line for learning and producing work. So I love the schooling part. When we start talking about your photographic journey, you said you started taking pictures and playing with it and as your senior in high school. But can you share with us what keeps it going today? A little bit of inspiration or a quote or mantra that keeps you moving with it today?
Oh, well, my inspiration is just, going out in nature every day or every chance I get, basically. It's not really every day, but it's quite frequently. In fact, recently, just a couple years ago, I moved and I now live like a quarter of a mile away from the American River. And I go kayaking, a minimum of 3 days a week, on the river to photograph. And so I do get out a lot. And that's, really my inspiration is just to get out there. As far as mantra goes, the one that I thought of when I saw your question was ride the light. And that's a quote that I used to teach a lot of workshops. And I had a workshop company years ago with William Neal and Jeff Nixon. And we were in Death Valley one time chasing the light, basically. And we came up with ride the light as our motto.
Ride the light. I love it. I mean, isn't there a little booklet or something that says chasing light or something like that? I mean, it's a great concept. You got to go after it. Like that's what photography is. Without light, there is no photography. So
right.
I mean, looking back, other than being out in nature and seeing what keeps it going, what sparked your interest enough in photography, or more specifically, what you're doing, fine art, nature, and wildlife photography, enough to actually pick up the camera and pursue it as a career?
Oh, I guess the big thing that inspired me was shortly after I graduated from college. I took a trip and landed out west and landed in Yosemite. I grew up back east in Baltimore, went to school in Washington, D.C., got in a van and pretty much ran out of money on the West Coast and got a job in Yosemite National Park. And I got a job at the Ahwahnee Hotel washing dishes. And my dad would tell all his friends that Lewis was out in California into ceramics. But shortly thereafter, I found out that the person who had worked at the Ansel Adams Gallery in Yosemite as the photographer had left. So I went over and applied for that job and got the job at the Ansel Adams Gallery and got to work there back when Ansel was still alive and Ansel was doing his workshops and inviting all the people that I'd studied in college were there live in front of me, teaching at Ansel's workshops. So that was my inspiration to go at it full time.
So you've spent time with the father of photography. I gotta head out to California and hang out with you now, because I mean that's as close a connection I'm gonna get, right? So, oh man, that's amazing. That's awesome. And what a great way to get there. Get in the van and go and run out of money and get into ceramics.
Yeah,
I love that. So, I mean, it hasn't been all this amazing success and glory in what you're doing. There are hard times, especially in business, when we're trying to make this stuff work. Can you share with Photo World a time where, maybe we'll call it a learning moment or a failure moment, where you tried something and you had to learn the hard way as to why it didn't work out?
Oh, business-wise, the whole business model back when I started was so different. It was, stock photography, and you could actually make a living doing that. Mm-hmm. I guess the hard part was thinking you could do it on your own without a stock agency back then, and trying and learning that I needed help selling. I couldn't reach enough buyers by myself and didn't know enough to reach those buyers, and needed to get help and find somebody to help me sell my work. So I guess that was kind of a learning experience.
Yeah.
As far as all that went. Yeah.
Yeah, that stock photography. Oh my gosh, what a market back in the days. But then even not so long ago, I mean, it only started really falling off about 15 years ago is when it was really starting to take a dive. So that's crazy.
Yeah. But totally different way of life.
Yeah, I got a few local friends in the Chicago area where they made their bread and butter out of stock photography, and they loved it, working for the different houses and agencies that just one after another, they needed it constantly. So with today's stuff, we have little things that work into our system, whether they're amazingly helpful or just another little tidbit that works in the way of the process between the shooting and the editing and the putting work out there. Is there a piece to your practice that you would consider to be one of the most important parts?
Oh, I'd say just social media, but more than just social media, your mailing list, your email, staying in touch with people, making sure you don't disappear and fall off the face of the earth, so that people can find you and see you and remember your name and hear your name.
Yeah, that repetition, Photo World, getting out there. I mean, especially if you're going to start a business, that's the way to get going. Social media is free. Utilize that.
Right.
Hit it every day at least, if not more than once a day. So
yeah, and trying to stay current with it and keep up with it can be daunting at times, because there's just so many hours in a day, and usually the social media on a immediate kickback isn't profitable, but it's the relationships that you make with the people through that is.
Yeah, I mean, I just today published a piece to my website, the apply section, because I'm looking for a new assistant for my Rob Kruger photography, and I'm trying to get a few people involved with Take and Talk Pics. So I have one specific field that I'm looking for a social media expert to work part-time for the podcast and help out with that, just so I can be a little more up to date, because I feel like I fall by the wayside on that all the time. So super important.
Yes.
So you've been doing business, you've refined your skills one thing after another and really worked out start to finish, from capture to delivery, what works. But in your business practices, can you define one bad business habit that you would actually like to break?
Yeah, I think my bad habit is, when I sit down for the day and start one project, it'll sort of lead me into doing something else, which leads me into doing another thing. And I don't, the hard part is staying on task to complete one project before jumping into something else.
The YouTube effect.
Yeah, exactly. Only I'm just doing it with my own, it's like, oh, well, that would be a good idea if I did this, and to start working on something. It's like, well, finish the one idea first.
Yeah, the process of organization. Oh my goodness, it is a tough one. But there's ways around it. There are ways to get it through that system. But I think we just get so excited about what we're doing, right? You just kind of, I got to move on to this now because I know what to do. So
yeah, and it's, I'm pretty, disciplined when it comes to it. But then there are times when I find it's like, oh man, I just spent 2 hours, off on this tangent when I should have been, back on track on the task. And it's like I had a good time doing it, but it didn't accomplish my goal.
Oh man, I swear, and I hate to admit it, but I swear every day there's a little piece of my day that goes away with that exact reason behind it.
Yeah. Well, and it's not really a wasted time, but it's just the same thing is on your to-do list the next day because you didn't do it that day.
Right. Exactly. Oh, I mean, Lewis, we have a wide range of photographers listening, from pros who've been doing it for a while and others who are just looking to really start out in photography and maybe make a business out of this. Could you share with Photo World one thing that you think would lead to growth and success in a business, regardless of their current level?
Oh, I'd say being persistent in what you do. I always say, do what you love and love what you do, but, be the best you can at it, and work your tail off, basically, because, nobody's going to be coming to you. So as a photographer, you've got to, make all the connections and do all the reaching out and make sure your work is out there in front of people, and there's no time for vacation. So it's basically, just work hard at it and be persistent. And if it's something you really want to do, just make sure, really, I tell people, make sure that, number one, you have a backup plan, but make sure you know business and know something about business and how to run a business a little bit, and then go out there and make sure you're the best at what you do, or the best you can be anyway at what you do. And make sure you're always comparing yourself to the competition, because, you may love photography, but, maybe for some reason yours isn't as good as the next guys that you see, and isn't going to be. Then, that it could be a fun hobby, but it's not going to be a way to make a living.
Right. And with the comparing yourself to competition or whatever, it's like, do it. If you're doing that, Photo World, look at it the right way. Don't just, oh, they're accomplishing all this and I'm not. It's, what are they doing that I'm not doing? Compare your work to the competition or the people who inspire you is the better way I like looking at it, because if you're doing your thing and you're hitting your market the way you're supposed to, there is no competition. There's a piece of it for all of us. So just look at your work and see what you can improve on. And usually that can come through inspiration from what others have already accomplished. So, take the time and look at work and be inspired, because it's so hard to be a solo act all the time with every aspect of what you're doing. You have to realize that it's nearly impossible to just go all alone in every way.
Yeah, and do whatever you can to network with other photographers and meet other people who are doing it, because, all their experience is going to help you out. And whether it just becomes from, going to local camera clubs or photo group type things, or, just calling up somebody if there's a pro in your area that, you admire, or you like what they're doing, or they have a good business, volunteer to take them out to lunch or something one day, or, drop by their studio and bring them something, snacks or something, just to talk to them and get some ideas, because, all those people have the experience that can only help you.
It sounds like an invitation to me, Photo World. Go buy lunch for Lewis and you'll be all set.
That way I won't have to buy lunch. Yeah.
So when we're going through our careers and, we don't know the stretch of them at all, we just kind of keep doing what we do and we're passionate about it. We have these moments that, something changed and, it's this little light bulb that went off, and I refer to them as the aha moments, but I don't think there's just one. I think there's many through a career where things start to really shift in a good way. Can you recall some time, some moment, an aha moment that worked out for you?
Yeah, I'd say there's a couple, but one of the bigger aha moments that I can think of is I was around when Outdoor Photographer magazine was just starting up. And that year that the magazine started up, they sent every photographer who had a picture in the Sierra Club calendars a letter telling you that they were starting this magazine. They were going to be looking for work and, to please submit to them. Well, it was probably like the only year I had a picture in the Sierra Club calendar, but I got that letter. And I put together this, what I thought was a great package. I had written a little guide when I lived in Yosemite for the concession on photographing the park. And I put that guide together and samples of my work and a couple article ideas. And I mailed off what I thought was like the most incredible package to Outdoor Photographer. And then I never heard a word. And a friend of mine was getting married in San Diego, and I was driving down from Yosemite, and Outdoor Photographer's offices were in LA. So I had to drive right through LA. So I called up and asked if I could make an appointment with the editor. And I went in, and I remember walking into Steve Werner's office. And to me, it was like this huge office, and he had this big desk kind of back in the corner thing. And, I walk in, and I'm like 23 years old or something, totally intimidated by this whole scene. I lived in the mountains, in the woods, I didn't know from business. But I walk in and I meet him, and I pretty much showed him everything that I had sent to him 3 months earlier in that package. But I was sitting at the desk and talking to him, and he actually assigned me 2 articles to write. And after it was done, I said, I have these articles to do, right? This is a done deal. And he goes, yeah. I said, okay, now it's my turn to ask you a question. And he said, what's that? And I said, I sent you all this stuff months ago and I never heard from you. What's the difference now? And he turned to me and goes, look over your shoulder. And behind me, literally from the floor to the ceiling, were 2 stacks of envelopes and packages and boxes and tubes and all the stuff that he had received from people when he put out that call. He goes, I'm sure your stuff's in there somewhere, but it's making that personal contact and going out of the way to do that. And from that, I learned that, the more people you meet, the better off you're going to be. So the more people that can help you in your business that you personally know, the better off your business is going to be.
Right. I mean, knocking on doors and shaking hands is a huge thing. That face-to-face is a wild difference from social media. And
right.
It's a much better connection because it's the original connection. Like you said,
right.
that huge stack behind
remember.
you. Right. I mean, this today, I met you through Mike Motes, who we on a show a while ago now. And Photo World, I'm talking to Lewis today, and we're talking about his work and his business. And it's just a huge little success for me that I'm excited about meeting this new photographer. And here we are Skyping face to face and getting this connection. It wasn't just a simple email or anything like that. And you have to put in the time because, I mean, Lewis, we went through a few emails back and forth before we could get this going. And here we are today. It was awesome. It is awesome. I'm enjoying it. So, I mean, Photo World, take the time, whether it's through email or meeting somebody, and actually do it. It comes back to what I say all the time. Do the work. Just do the work.
Right. And, one way to meet, some of these people is to go to some of these, conferences or trade shows or whatever, where they're going to be there and not just, walk by, but introduce yourself, say hello, talk to these people. I mean, one of the big things, when I was first starting out, I wanted to meet publishers and I wanted to meet stock agency people and I wanted to meet, editors and all that kind of thing. And the way most people did it was, especially if you lived out in California, you made a trip back to New York and you touted your portfolio around and you tried to see as many people as you could, in a short time or whatever. And I didn't really want to do that. So I came up with another idea, and I decided to put on what I call the Nature Photographers Marketing Seminars. And I invited all the people I wanted to meet to be speakers. And then I charged people to come hear them speak. So I made money on the seminars and I got to meet all the people that I wanted to meet. And through that, I ended up with my stock agencies that I became part of. I ended up getting book published because one of the people I had speak ended up as my publisher and things of that sort. So do whatever it takes and be creative in trying to meet people.
Yeah, and I think like the aha moment, we have these I made it moments or these little victories that kind of validate what we're doing as photographers, especially in business and trying to make our way with it. So, Lewis, can you share a time with Photo World that you kind of had an I made it moment, whether you were the first time you were published or, getting that stock agency or something?
Well, yeah, to me, it was, I had written those couple articles for Outdoor Photographer, and I don't know, maybe this is my third or fourth or fifth article, I forget which at some point, but I was getting the magazine, to look for the article, and I glanced at the masthead and I saw my name there as a contributing editor. Well, the publisher never told me he was going to do that. So it came as a real surprise. I mean, I actually remember I was visiting my parents and I was back at my parents' home and, I saw that and it's like, wow, I'm a contributing editor to a national magazine. And that was like way cool.
Yeah.
So that was an aha moment.
That's awesome. Very good. Very good. And during your career so far, I mean, you've gotten advice left and right, good and bad. Can you recall the best advice you've ever received?
Oh, well, yeah, I guess so. It was, I was still working just as a clerk at the Ansel Adams Gallery and, trying to decide what to do. And during one of his workshops, I got to show my portfolio to Ruth Bernard. And she looked at my work and then she just looked at me and her sweet little face. And she was, I don't know, probably in her 80s by then or whatever. And she just looked up at me and said, "You should be a photographer." And so that was a piece of advice I decided to take.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, heck, I don't I don't remember ever hearing that I should be a photographer. I mean, I think just growing up and stuff, family and friends like, oh man, you're good, or whatever they had to say. But yeah, I mean, that's a good piece of advice, because maybe you were on the fence about it. Maybe you weren't thinking about it too much. Just like, I think I want to, but I don't know. And having somebody you respect and who has some authority can tell you, go do it. That's kind of a cool feeling.
Yeah, it made me realize that, I mean, that's kind of what I wanted to do, but it was like, well, that cemented it. I have to try no matter what the consequences are.
Right. And you said earlier in the show here that you probably wouldn't have started the same way if you had the opportunity. So if you had to start over again, and let's say you even have the same gear and the same knowledge that you currently have, what would you do first to begin your new photography business?
Yeah, when I read that question and kind of looked at it, it was funny. The first thought that came to my mind was an old line from Firesign Theater. It's like, what are you going to do now? And it was cut off the soles of my shoes, climb a tree, and learn to play the flute. And I was thinking, maybe that's what I would do today, because I'm not sure I'd want to start over in today's climate for photography. it's just so different. Because now, when I was growing up and starting off in it, that, your image had value. And the way I see it today, your image really doesn't have value anymore. I mean, pictures are, sold for pennies or whatever.
Right.
And so, the photographer has a value, but your pictures really don't. So the photographers have a value. And as a nature landscape photographer, now mostly our value is teaching. Mm-hmm. Because that work is a dime a dozen as far as royalty free and stock agencies and Flickr and all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
And there's some great work in all of that, in all those venues basically. I mean, I go on Flickr or I go on Facebook, and on Facebook I've a member of a lot of different groups and nature photography groups and things, and I see stuff that blows me away every single day, by people who are just out there doing it for fun. And unfortunately, a lot of those people are willing to sell their work for pennies or give it away, so that the image itself really doesn't have, a very strong monetary value anymore. So the only way, a photographer has value is if somebody wants you to go out and tell a story, where you get hired to do that type of assignment because they like your work and find that valuable. Or, for people who have been around and been in it for a while, it's teaching. So, if I were starting out today, I'd probably realize that if I wanted to make any money at it, I would have to be making money from showing other people how to be good at it, and work on ebooks and trying to start up workshops and teaching. And I would probably start on a local basis and then try to build that up a little bit bigger.
Yeah, I mean the old adage of those who can't teach is totally garbage. I mean, seriously, those who teach are the ones who do it the best and have been doing it for a while. And it's pretty amazing. And I don't know if I really look at my teaching as the next solution to my photography, because I only got into this 6 years ago, really going professional with it. And that's still pretty new for these days. And, I've also been teaching at a community college out here and just kind of getting more information out there to those who want to start up and learn. And of course, the podcast is a great resource for learning and hearing more about photography and the business of. But I feel like you're right. It's such a saturated market. It's difficult to get into. But if you're truly interested in it, if you're really passionate about it, and you feel that this is the right calling for you, there is room. So I'm not going to say don't go do it, because I really believe that there's room for all of us if you really want to get into it. It just may be a different path than you might have heard from others at some point, because it's different. It just has changed. The whole landscape has changed.
Yeah, and I would recommend take writing classes, learn how to write so you can package your photography with a story, because stories have more value than individual images do these days.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. And you said you're a part of groups on Facebook and things of that nature to kind of keep involved with the community in a different way. Do you have an app or an internet resource that you think Photo World could benefit from knowing about?
Oh, well, like I said, I just searched, on Facebook, and I belong to like anything that has nature, wildlife, and photography in the title. Join those groups, meet those people. As far as learning, photography. I mean, there's so many different resources and things, but I'm also an instructor at the Canon, which was started by Trey Ratcliffe, which is a kind of a mentor-based learning society, I guess you would call it, where you form, like I have a group of students and we all interact together. So the students are helping each other and critiquing each other's work. And then I come in and give them my 2 cents worth and, add my opinion to it. But it's where we formed a community basically that helps each other. So that's kind of a fun thing to look at. And just, any organizations in your area where you're finding people who have similar and like ideas, I think are the best resources because you can actually talk to those people.
Right. Yeah. Get involved in community. At the very least, do some meetups or something. I mean, there's a lot of options out there. And
right. There's just so many these days.
Network,
Yeah. Networking is the big thing.
So other than meeting and working near or with Ansel Adams in some regard, can you name a couple of photographers who really inspired you in those earlier days?
Yeah, my big inspirations, well, besides Ansel, and I'm very fortunate because I've gotten to meet pretty much all of them, was Philip Hyde, who did a lot of the Sierra Club books. So on, saving the redwoods and the Cascade Mountains, Dinosaur National Monument. So he did all these coffee table books for them, and I actually got to meet Philip and teach with Philip and remain friends with Philip basically till the end of his life. In high school, one of the photographers that my teacher presented to me that really was an inspiration to me was Ernst Haas. And again, at the Ansel Adams Gallery during Ansel's workshops, I got to meet him and spend some time with him. So they were big influences on me. So I guess those would be the big older, more well-known. Yeah. But I grew up with a generation of photographers that we sort of all knew each other and all, did things together. So William Neal is a really great friend of mine. We lived in Yosemite for many years at the same time. As I mentioned, Jeff Nixon. But, I knew Art Wolf and, knew Galen Rao and, all of these people because at that generation, all of us, we sort of were a lot of people had park backgrounds and park influences and worked in national parks. So it was a tight knit group.
Yeah. Art Wolf was one of my earlier inspirations because I started out photographing nature and landscapes and stuff and really, really liked that because, they weren't people. It didn't talk back to me. So I really liked that.
Right.
But man, I saw that the market was really competitive and I just didn't know where to begin on that. And I turned towards portraits and weddings and I've really found a good calling for that. I really enjoy them. So it's worked out well for me. So when we're looking through our bags and our gear and everything, you kind of see those pieces of equipment that you're going to bring with you every time. Can you tell us one piece of gear that you could not live without?
I'd say out of what I have now, if I had to go with one lens or whatever that I would take with me would probably be my 24 to 105 lens.
Yeah, nice little range and a decent aperture f4, right? So that's
Yeah, I always shoot on a tripod anyway
yeah.
when I'm doing my landscape stuff, so that's not really an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and these days, camera bodies come and go. Rather quickly, especially compared back to the film days. So you can't get too attached to those because you're in the blink of an eye they're going to change. So yeah, I'd say either my lens or my tripod. So
do you have a particular tripod that is
I
worth
use
sharing?
I use a Faisal. So I'm one of the few people I know, FEISOL, and it's a really well-made carbon fiber tripod that's usually less expensive than some of the bigger names. But
yeah, I've heard good things. I've never really looked into it. I don't use a tripod that often. Probably less than I should. I should usually try to take that out a few more times a day. I don't know. So we're almost out of time here, but I kind of wanted to get an update on what you're doing these days. Do you have a recent or upcoming project in the works that you're really excited about?
Well, it's kind of both recent and still ongoing. As I mentioned, I moved to the river about 2 years ago. So I've been documenting the life and wildlife on a stretch of the American River near my home.
Mm-hmm.
And I recently put out a DVD called My Stretch of the River, a Photographer's Journal, that has my photos and then my journal writings for a year of travel on the river, basically. And it's also available on Vimeo as a digital download or a rental. And that's kind of an ongoing project. I mean, I did the DVD of the first year's worth, but I've just recently completed my second year and trying to figure out if I'm going to do a follow-up or how I'm going to present that part. But it's just kind of an ongoing thing, and I think as long as I live close by, I'll continue on that project.
Yeah, nice. Well, I'll have to add that link to the show notes page along with a couple other things we've talked about, so that way Photo World can be directly in touch with the things you've been mentioning and find out more about you and what you're doing. And we're about to wrap things up here, but before we go, can you share with Photo World one parting piece of guidance and then the best way that we can reach you, whether it be your website or some sort of social media, and then we'll say goodbye.
That one piece of advice is, if you love photography and you're considering making it a business, remember, once it becomes an avocation, it does become work. So make sure you have a business plan and some knowledge on how to run a business before you jump off the cliff. But once you jump, remember, the sensation of flying is great.
Oh my goodness, I love that. That's awesome and so true. You got to be ready. My goodness, I think a lot of us get into it just thinking, I'm ready to do this. I can run a business. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I have to learn how to run a business really quick.
Right.
I'm already 30 steps behind before I even started. So
just work hard, do your best. Don't shoot for the moon. Take small steps, and you'll get there. The best place to reach me, I guess, is my website, which is just lewiskemper.com, LEWISKEMPER.com. I'm a regular on Facebook, probably the most on Facebook, and it's Lewis Kemper Photography on Facebook, and Lewis Kemper on Twitter and Instagram.
Awesome. So we'll have those links as well as social media and everything, so that way Photo World can have a one-stop shop to follow and find you. If they don't go directly to your website for whatever reason, it'll be on the show notes page. Just type in Lewis in the search bar at takingtalkpics.com and his show notes will pop up. You'll have it all right there. But Lewis, I cannot thank you enough for your time today and sharing such great value. Photo World thanks you and happy shooting.
Same to you. Happy shooting. Good luck to everybody.
Hey Photo World, TakeTalkBook.com. That's right, you can get a free audiobook today and a free month trial subscription for Audible.com. Just go to TakeTalkBook.com and get started today. Thank you, Photo World, for stopping by on another great episode here on TakeandTalkPics.com. Be sure to share Take and Talk Pics with your friends and photo family out there. Tweet about it with hashtag HeyPhotoWorld, and we'll follow along and see what great things you have to say. Happy shooting.